That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan & Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan & Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Great to have you with us on this Thursday. Mark Brennan in a few moments here. Jerry Dulac in the next half hour. This half hour being brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports domestics microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, lots and lots of snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies, ready-to-drink cocktails like High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal, and the pickle bar led by my personal favorites, the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. And the opportunity I had to sit down and talk with my good friend Mark Brennan, I embrace. Mark, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Steve. I was just thinking, you remember, when spring practice ended and, nothing happened for, the next three months?
There was a period of time here where when wrestling season ended, then you had spring practice, and literally there was nothing of anything. I'm talking, there was no Spikes baseball, anything like that. You just kind of waited until football media day in August.
Yeah,
now it's 180 of that.
Until first week of August, and now it's a little different story. But that's actually good. It makes it more fun to cover stuff.
Well, actually, one of the elements that's a little bit different for Penn State basketball fans this year is the Yanic Konan Niederhauser saga going on in Chicago. It was not really a surprise to me, Mark, that Yanic did well at the elite camp, because when I saw who the big guys were at the elite camp, I thought those were guys he could dominate. Now I want to see how he does at the Combine. And, because now it's Cooper Flagg, it's Janai Broom, it's guys like that. What's been your take on what we've been able to see as to what he's done in Chicago as part of what's now going to be a guessing game?
I think just the athleticism, Steve. I was kind of watching a little bit of the Combine, and they were flashing up some of the numbers. And, he had a max vertical of 37 inches. Now, that's not like what they do at the NFL Combine where it's from stationary. So you could take a couple steps and go off of 2 feet. But for somebody who is 7'1", to have a 37-inch vertical is insane. It's nuts. And the other thing is he's a legitimate 7-footer. I haven't seen all his testing numbers. I don't think they're going to post them until the Combine is over. I know he's done them, but they don't put the entire list out.
Right.
But we saw it firsthand. As I watched him last year, I was thinking, what did they do at his previous institution that they didn't realize what they had? You know what I mean?
Right. I thought the same thing at Northern Illinois. What did they miss? That's the part that I remember the first time I saw him last summer. My first thought was, how other people miss on this guy?
Yeah, and I just, from my perspective, Steve, and I was kind of beating his drum as Penn State was struggling last year. I don't think as a team, and this is my opinion, nobody has to agree with it, but, I see a guy who ended up leading the team in field goals made and I think he was 5th in field goals attempted.
Right.
And I just don't know that they ever quite adjusted, and I hate to come across as knocking Ace, because what Ace had done for years with Mike Rhodes had worked, kind of being the primary scorer and facilitator, but I don't know that they adjusted until it was too late in the season. And that's why I'm really hoping he comes back, not as me being a fan, but as a media guy, to see how they're able to adjust things around him. But the more you see it and the more you hear scouts talking, it's like this is a tough one, because if you're a Penn State basketball fan, that would be like, if he ends up being drafted, Penn State's never had a first-round draft pick. And even if he goes in the second, they've had 4 guys or 3 guys in the last 30 years. I mean, So even if that happens for them, that's a great reflection of the program. But he obviously would be a pretty key guy for them to have coming back next year. So pins and needles, I think May 28 is the date, but I would not be surprised if he makes up his mind a little bit sooner. But it's weird, because if you're a Penn State fan, are you rooting for him to do well at the Combine or not do well at the Combine? Then I think in their hearts most people are rooting for him to do well.
Well, look, if you know him at all, you want him to do well, because I genuinely like the kid. I mean,
yeah.
So I want nothing but the best for him. If that's the best for him, great. To me, the gray area is going to be a second-round grade. And
right.
that becomes second-round grades mean that you're drafted, but it doesn't bring with it the bonuses, the guarantees of a first-round grade. And not only that, you might get more money coming back next year to play at Penn State than you would getting a second-round grade.
Right. And the other thing, I checked it last year, and I forget who the players were, Steve, so forgive me, but I always do this with the NFL draft, because you look at who the last player in the first round is and what they're projected to make, and then the first player in the second round. It's a significant difference, and you don't have that 50-year team option. In the NBA, it's different. Just in looking at it, it was pretty structured what all the first-rounders got. But then in the second round, it was like all over the place. Like the guy who went second or third in the second round ended up making significantly more guaranteed. So I think it's just a matter of fit. It's a matter of, how highly were these guys regarded in college, that they're kind of known commodities. Some guys are known commodities. Some guys are kind of, gambles. They're risking on maybe somebody from overseas who they don't know a lot about but has a potential upside. So back to your point, yeah, it's a big difference if you're going to be a second rounder. And I don't know, Steve, I've been watching college hoops for a long time. You've been covering it longer than me and seen more games than me in person. But I think he has the ability to be a first-round draft pick. I really do. And that's not hyperbole. That's like, when you see the skills that guy had, it was early in the season last year, and I forget which game, my memory's going in my old age, but he got the ball out past the elbow, and he made a move and drove to the hoop and dunked, and I'm like, I don't remember ever seeing a Penn State legitimate center doing that.
Right.
Now, yeah, they had guys who did it who were like in the 6'8", that range, but a 7-footer, a 6'11" guy, I'm like, this is some unbelievable footwork and skill. And then you look at what he can do on the defensive end. And I remember, I think Dick Girardi is the one who always says, when you're projecting somebody into the NBA, everybody typically looks great on offense, but who are they going to guard on defense?
Right.
And that guy is going to be able to be, I'm not saying that Joker won't be able to push him around, but he pushes everybody around, right? Or Embiid, he pushes everybody around. Right. So he'll be able to hold his own in the paint and be that help shot blocker that is really key. And that's why I look at that guy, and I think if he doesn't project into the first round this year, and it's looking like that may not happen, I do think he has a great opportunity to be a first-rounder next year.
Yeah, he can be a first-rounder next year, no question, if he were to come back.
Right.
Because that's the one area that this combine will show. Because of Janai Broome, for example, if he happens to match up with him, Broome will push you around. Okay,
Yeah.
well, if he can withstand that, that's that for him. This will be an opportunity to show he can push back, which would be big for him. And look, he's a guy that played point guard till he had a growth spurt. That's the same Anthony. That's the same story as Anthony Davis when he was in Chicago.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I'm not. Now the part that he's going to have to show is this, and I know it's something Joe Crispin wants him to do should he come back, but he needs to be more consistent of facing up and hitting that in a college 3-point shot. He only took 11 last year. He made 1. And I know he can hit the shot, but in competition, I think he's going to have to, like we talk about what he does around the basket. I think with his skills that you're talking about, Mark, I think he's going to have to show in this combine a consistency and the ability to hit that shot, because what makes Embiid only averages 3 attempts a game, but he makes 1, and that's enough to bring people out, and Yanic has to do that.
Yeah, they had numbers for that, Steve, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think he was 13 of 30 on what they call the star drill. Now, that's not being guarded. That's
right.
Going from 3-point to 3-point, kind of making a star going from spot to spot, which was middle of the pack. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But he really struggled on the corner 3. I think he only made like 3 of 25. Right. And, that's not what you're typically asking your 7-footer to do. I mean, when you see Embiid, when he's shooting, and I'm not comparing Yanic to Embiid. Don't get me wrong.
Embiid's on the wing.
Right. That's typically somebody who you're using for spacing. You bury them in that corner, and that's not a negative. That's actually become extremely valuable. Danny Green, guys who have really extended their careers. But the ability to go kind of around the perimeter, I think he showed all right in the unguarded drills. Now let's see. I saw the first box score. I think he was 3 of 4 from the field in the game yesterday. Don't know what those shots were. I mean, assuming they were pretty close. But I agree with you. I would have liked to see him at least try a few more last year, because you've seen him even more in practice than I have. Sure. He's got a good stroke. There's nothing awkward about his shot. It's a good shot. I think he just needs to do more of it. And if Joe Crispin's telling you to shoot, I think you probably should start shooting.
Right. Well, that's what Joe told me. He says, look, it opens up the entire floor if we can get him to face up and take that kind of shot. Yeah. And, I mean, he told me that should he come back, that's one of the areas they're really going to work on, because he thinks that'll make him not only valuable to what Penn State's doing now, but it'll also increase his value at the next level. If he becomes a guy that can hit that kind of shot, look, you're talking about not just a first-round pick. He'd be a top 20 guy.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I hope for people who are listening, Steve and I have seen a lot of Penn State basketball, and we do not talk about guys like this just because we know them, just because he speaks 5 different languages, which is, 4.5 more than I can speak. I mean, you see things in him. I remember when I first saw him last summer, and, guys are listed at 7 foot all the time, Steve, right?
Yeah.
And what did we see with Ace Bailey? He was listed at 6'10", and he ends up being 6'7.5". This dude is 7 feet tall. I mean, I'm 6'4", and I stood next to him. I'm like, holy crap, this kid is a legit 7-footer. And that is not a common thing to be that tall and have his sort of athleticism. That's what I'm saying. When you that 37-inch vertical isn't going to win you games. I mean, Joker probably has like a 20-inch vertical, but it just speaks to the athleticism. So I'm anxious to see the shuttle numbers and the other things he ran, because that's kind of elite stuff for somebody that big.
Yeah, no question. Because that's you have to have the ability to, in the NBA, if you can bring more to the table. Now, there are some guys, like, I'll give you an example. I know he's been ill, so he hasn't helped a lot here, but Kristaps Porzingis changed the Celtics lineup because he was a big man that was a different kind of player.
Yeah. The only thing I haven't liked about him, and maybe it's because he's ill, is that I think he goes too far to what you're saying. I think he lives outside of the paint offensively, or outside of the 3-point line offensively. I'm like watching games saying, what is this guy doing? Get inside a little bit. Right. Sometimes I go that way with Embiid as well, but that's maybe because I'm just a traditionalist.
Okay, so the football team goes through this area, when it gets to the additional portals, they get a wide receiver, Pena, and they get Campbell, a linebacker from North Carolina. Penn State's very selective with the portal. Initially, how do you feel they did through this wave here?
I think it was terrific, and it's not just me. I mean, I know. After seeing what Penn State was able to add, 24/7 Sports is putting them as the number one team in the nation coming out of the spring transfer window. To me, you look at a guy like Pena, and you add him with Hudson and Ross, Steve, the two guys they brought in mid-year, and all three of them, a level of consistency that Penn State has not had. I mean, you probably know this, and I dug this up for a series we did heading into spring, but Ross last year did something that no Penn State receiver has done since 2022, and that was catch a pass in every single game he played.
Right.
So Penn State's had good receivers, but they've just not been consistent. And you look at what Ross has done, you look at what Hudson's done, and then you bring in Pena, a guy who had almost 1,000 receiving yards last year. And, that was a glaring need, and I think they met it and then some. And, I think you're hoping that a Caden Saunders, if you're Penn State, you're hoping that he comes back and is able to maybe show you what he was able to do, what we heard about and what you saw in drills last year before he got banged up and was never really full strength the rest of the year, and what some of the younger kids are able to bring. But that was a position of need, and they obviously addressed it. And then, the thing about Amari Campbell is he played a lot of football at North Carolina last year. One of our North Carolina, Inside Carolina is our 24/7 sports site, and they do an awesome job. And what one of their analysts said is, he's 6'1", and a bit sawed off. He's not, but he's a legitimate 230 pounds. Yeah. And I'm thinking, geez, that kind of reminds me of Mike. Why am I forgetting his last name? Holt. And a Mike linebacker. He wore the green dot on his helmet last year, so the plays went through him. And if you think about the most glaring need on that defense, obviously, losing Abdul Carter is tough. Losing the DBs they lost is tough. But I would argue the guy who's going to be the most difficult to replace is going to be Kobe King, because he's been directing that defense for the last couple of years. Yeah. And to have somebody who can go in there, and again, I'm not saying that he's going to definitely be the guy, Campbell, but he has experience there, and he's a veteran presence, a guy who's played a lot of football, where anybody else you're going to put at that position has not played a lot of football. So it's a hedge, and that's the wrong way of putting it. It gives you more competition at the position. That's a better way. That's what James Franklin would say. Mm-hmm. They want to have the best competition they could have at every position, and having that at the Mike linebacker, I think, is a really good thing. I think the one thing this guy will do better than Holt did, rush the passer. He's got kind of the innate ability to get to the passer. And then I also think if you're looking at going with a 4-2-5, he's able to play either of those two box positions in Knowles, what Knowles typically goes with. And when you look at the way the Penn State roster is comprised right now, I think they're still loaded up front, even with the guys you lost. And obviously, I think we all have a pretty good feel about what they have on the back end. Again, even given the guys you lost. So I think he fits in really well with what they have here. So I thought they did really well for themselves in the portal overall. And I think you make a good point. I go to some of these schools, Steve, and I see 15, 18 guys being added. Yep. And, I see Penn State guys going to some other places that have just added tons of people, and I just wonder, are they bringing you in for a tryout? Penn State's bringing in guys to really help. And then one other thing I'll say in the transfer portal, there were some really good offensive linemen in the portal who had a serious interest in Penn State. Yep. And Penn State only brought one guy in, the kid from Texas A&M, T.J. Shanahan. They got him relatively early. but what a difference for Penn State from when James Franklin first arrived. And they had to move Derek Dowry and Brian Gaia from the defensive line to offensive line. Now, and again, even with guys you're losing to the NFL, they're running, too deep at nearly every position, even with losing a guy like J.B. Nelson. So they were so deep there that very talented players wanted to come as offensive linemen, and there just wasn't room. And why do I mention that? That's the sign of a really good program. Yeah. Okay? Good players want to come. You just don't have room. Because you want to, as much as they might help, you don't want to have that much talent that you're sacrificing it somewhere else.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that Javen Williams has really developed. And you could see the last 3 weeks of the spring why T.J. Shanahan came in here. You could see it.
Well, and a guy like Cooper Cousins. I mean, I don't think it's not a surprise, but I don't think it's a coincidence that J.B. Nelson, left. He's a very good player.
Yeah.
But I think we're to the point now where guys see the writing on the wall. JB, was a very good player he was a starter a couple years ago, a key backup last year. But, he's into his last year. He wants to be a starter. And I think people are looking at Cooper Cousins and saying, wow, I mean, that's going to be a pretty tall order for somebody to root him out of there. And you're talking about a true sophomore. I mean, Steve, we've been around this game long enough, and I know I keep saying that offensive line is much different than other positions. To come in and make an impact as a freshman and true sophomore, that is special, and that speaks to how good Cooper Cousins is.
Mark, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'll see you at Coaches versus Cancer in a few weeks, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark Brennan, 247 Sports. And half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
And it's out of here!
Hit a home run of a deal with Sunbury Motors Hyundai. Sunbury Motors Hyundai has incredible May deals that will have you cheering too. Just listen. There's 20 2025 Hyundai Elantras with financing as low as 2.99% APR for 48 months or up to $2,325 off. Hit a grand slam with up to $4,000 off. 2025 Hyundai Santa Fe's. There's 18 to choose from, or they have financing as low as 2.99% APR for 48 months. How about 16 2025 Hyundai Palisades with financing as low as 3.99% APR for 60 months or $2,050 off. All new Hyundais come with Hyundai Assurance and America's best warranty. 10 years, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. In May, SMC is better than the ballpark. So be alive in 2025 and head to Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.